Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to episode 209 of the On Air Advocate. Where at the On Air Advocate, we look to provide education, support, and empowerment for all of those with different abilities, mental and medical illnesses, and their caregivers. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Tammy Flynn, and I am the host and producer of the On Air Advocate. And I am super excited if you are here this afternoon joining us, or whether you are catching this on the replay. Now, as always, if you think any of the content that we are talking about today could be useful for anyone in your network or your circle, please hit the share button and share the love with others. Well, as you guys know, we are in our month-long series as we drive awareness to Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And I am so excited today to have with us NaKole Watson. She is not only an author, she is a speaker, and she is a suicide prevention champion. Welcome, NaKole.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I am so excited to have you here. And this is the first time that you're here on the On Air Advocate. So I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about your background. I know that you kind of give yourself the title of the life protector and a little bit more of how that came to be. So I'm going to let you take the floor on this.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me again. So my name is NaKole Watson. I am 35. I'll be 36 in September. Very excited about that. So I have gone through a lot in my life. I have attempted suicide several times. And the way that I came into doing what I do now is that I made a video about my suicide attempts and just how horrible it was and how I got through it. And when I made the video, everybody started coming to me saying, wow, I felt the same way. Wow, I went through this too. And a lot of people who hadn't felt comfortable vocalizing it before felt comfortable after I made my video. So from there, it started to be that my name was associated with suicide prevention. And it just made me feel like, oh my goodness, this must be, one of my purposes in life, not knowing how big it was going to get. So I started talking to people who were suicidal, which caused me to end up being this huge suicide prevention advocate, somebody who talks people off the ledge. People call me, when they're in desperate situations. And, I talk them off the ledge. I check on them. I help them, and do things like that. So from there, I wanted to be more formal with it because I know that in society it's very important to be qualified for what you're doing. So even though I had the lived experience, I wanted to go ahead and get certification. So I went and I got the assist certification, and I got a whole bunch of other certifications just to kind of have the knowledge, the book knowledge about what to do. And so I have been on this journey since 2011, and I have taught hundreds of people out of suicide. And yeah, it's what I do day in and day out.
I know when I was reading, because obviously we had spoken briefly on the phone, but I was reading over 2,500 suicides prevented. That is from people who working with you, calling you for help. You've also become an anti-bullying strategist, which I think is just amazing. When I look at your story, what came first? So you made that video, but I know you started like a nonprofit, you're an author, you came into speaking. What was kind of the succession of that?
So I first started just speaking, like I would do conference calls and I would invite people who had been affected by suicide, survivors of suicide, and I would have them to tell their stories. And then from there, in 2016, I decided to write my book. And the reason that I wrote my book is because in the religious community, especially when you are a person of color, suicide and mental health are very much stigmatized. And so you have a lot of people who deal with mental health challenges who hide behind their religion, who hide behind their position in the church, in the religious system. And so because I know that a lot of my suicide calls, I would actually say more often than not, come from people who are clergy, people who are believers, people who are in religious and faith communities. I created a book. It's a devotional, and it's for people who deal with suicidal ideation. And I created it so that they would be able to privately walk through their struggles, because they're not as welcome, to talk about the things that they're going through. And so they wouldn't be the people who would comment on my status or watch my Facebook Live or be on my conference call and be able to speak, and other people identify who they are because they're somebody everybody knows. And so I created my book, number one, to talk about my experience, and number two, so that people who didn't feel comfortable getting help would have something to kind of bridge the gap until they would be more comfortable speaking for themselves.
And so the book is more of a kind of a walk. It walks them through. Do they have some different activities that they do in it, like that they write as well within the journal?
So I made it like a devotional, and then it has an accompanying journal. So in the devotional itself, you have a little excerpt that I wrote, and then you have an affirmation that you do, you have a prayer that you pray, and you have a journal activity that you write out. And that's for 30 days. And what it does, it helps you to build up that consistency of spending time with yourself and exploring how you feel and writing out, how you feel and what's going on with you. And then from there, I created a journal to accompany my book. So in that particular full journal, you have an opportunity to prepare yourself. So I ask questions like, what are you going to do when you're sad? What are you going to do when you're happy? What are you going to do when you're angry? And it gives you a place to write out and journal your thoughts, because what people don't understand about suicidal ideation and mental health challenges in general, you always need to be prepared. You always need to be able to say, when I get in this crisis, when I get in this time of feeling bad, this is what I'm going to say, this is what I'm going to do. And so that particular journal helps people to know how to do that.
And so after becoming an author and creating those books, you already had been speaking to people. When did that nonprofit come into play? And I love the hashtag, not on my watch. I always say that with family and things, and I used to work in a hospital setting as well. And I'm like, it's not going to happen on my watch. Not
Right. Yeah.
So tell me more about that organization.
So I think this was around 2013, 2014-ish. I really became like the not on my watch girl. Like, it was a real thing. People would tag me in social media posts where people were like, I'm about to jump off this bridge. And I'd be like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Not today. No, you're not. And so I really became that person. I was like a suicide prevention bulldog. Like, where are you? I'm coming to your house. I'm coming to your job. Where are you? Drop me a pin. I'm on my way. Because I don't play that. You're not going to allow this thing to take you out and on my watch. Like, you're not, And so I really became known as not on my watch, NaKole. It was so crazy. And so I decided to start my organization because I wanted to have a way to prevent suicide in a way that wasn't necessarily overt. So, like, for example, I volunteer with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, which is amazing, and I love it, right? But what I know is that a lot of people don't want to attach the word suicide to their situation, even when they're suicidal. So with my organization, I do things like on Christmas, I have this thing called This Christmas. And I find children who lost a parent in Q3 or Q4 of the year, and I get them things, and I get them toys, I get them suicide prevention resources and anti-bullying resources. But I package it under, I'm helping you have a Merry Christmas because you lost your parent. And so what my organization allows me to do is prevent suicide in a way that kind of flies under the radar of the stigma and helps me to just go in and do what I need to do without it being so pronounced.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And talk about your purpose. Oh my goodness. And so now speaking engagement, things like that, is that kind of the last layer of this as to, kind of rounding it out from the authorship to starting the nonprofit and now speaking to speak to youth as well as adults?
I speak to everybody. I don't like speaking at all. I would rather write, and stuff like that. But speaking is a big part of what I do. I speak to individuals, of course. I speak to youth groups. I speak to business owners, anybody, everybody, because suicidal ideation is something that the majority of people, the statistics say that 54% of Americans have been affected by suicide in some way, whether that's a relative, whether it's a friend, whether it's a famous person that you love, whatever it is. 54% is the majority of people in America. And so the majority of people you meet, suicide has impacted their life in some way.
Yes. Definitely. And I know that we were chatting on the phone and before the show really about the situation that we are in right now in America and how everything is so heavy. And so when we look at suicide prevention right now and we look at, starting on that help, what are different tools and strategies that you really are that you feel are very, very important for people to take with them at this time?
So the first thing you need to do is save the suicide prevention lifeline number in your phone. 800-273-8255. And the reason you need to do that is because you never know when you're going to be driving down the highway and somebody is about to be, jumping off a bridge or doing something to harm themselves. You never know when your family member is going to call you and say, I just got laid off my job and I'm about to end my life. And you, in that moment, are not going to know what to do. And so having that number in your phone means you can call people who are professionally trained to do this and say to them, hello, I am in this situation. I do not know what to do. What do I do? And I think that's very important during this time because there's a lot going on. And there's a lot that's going to go on that we haven't even seen yet. The other thing that I think is very important is that you check in with people. And we have to stop. I know that we are in the social media generation, and that is an amazing thing. We're on social media right now. But we have to actually check on people. Our version of checking on people has become, let me go on NaKole's Facebook page and see if she posted today, because if she posted today and she seems happy, she's okay. But there are people who get on social media and post hearts and smiley faces and flowers, and they are depressed. So we need to get back in the habit of actually, physically, directly checking on actual people and not checking on Facebook pages. Because Facebook pages aren't people. Instagram pages aren't people. Twitter pages are not people. They're pages. They're personas. They're highlight reels. And so that's very important. And the last thing I would say when it comes to strategies is have a conversation with somebody. You are acting very withdrawn. What is going on? Are you considering suicide? Are you depressed? Are you, instead of saying, "Oh, are you thinking about hurting yourself?" Because people who are suicidal aren't thinking about hurting themselves. They're thinking about killing themselves. That's not the same thing. And so we need to normalize asking the question and asking people what it is that they're going through. And so those would definitely be my top 3 things.
And I know at the American Association for Suicide Prevention, for that group, they have the hashtag Real Convo. And we talk about that a lot, is that to start asking people the direct question, to not be kind of beating around the bush or saying it in a different way. Is to just directly be asking the question. But a lot of times I think people don't do that. Do you think it's because they probably don't want the answer?
Because they don't want the answer. They don't want to feel responsible. And a lot of people think that asking the question puts the idea in somebody's head, and it doesn't. You can ask me all day, hey, do you feel like going and jumping off of a bridge? If that wasn't on my mind, it's not on my mind. You can ask me all day, hey, do you feel like, going to the mountains and hiking. If that's not something I was going to do, I'm not going to be like, oh, let me go to the mountains and go hiking right now because somebody asked me a question. And so a lot of times we think that asking the question is going to put it in our heads, but a lot of times, or put it in the person's head, but a lot of times asking the question is going to show somebody, number one, that you care, and number two, that you see what's going on. Because most people who are suicidal do not want to die. They just want their pain to end. And that's not the same thing either. And so if they see that you actually care about their life, it'll often inspire them to care about their life as well, enough to try to get help through what they're going through.
Yes. And I wanted to talk to you about this month being the Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. I know that you have created some resources. One that we spoke of was a mental health resource guide for women of color, and then also one for more faith-based pastors and things like that. Can you speak to those a little bit and what those kind of contain for information?
So the mental health resource guide for women of color is specifically dealing with resources for people who are culturally competent and who are people of color themselves. Because there is an experience that people of color have in this country that other people do not have. There's an experience that Black people have in this country that other people of color do not have. And so therefore, there are specialized therapists who deal with people from both groups. So you have the Latinx therapy. They deal with people in the Latinx community. You have the transgender, the LGBTQ Black, therapists that deal with people in that demographic, because Black trans women are the most likely to die. The lifespan of a Black trans woman is 35. I'm 35. So it's major. And then you have things like therapy for Black girls. You have all of these different therapy avenues that will allow you as a person of color to find somebody who can wholeheartedly identify with what's going on with you, because a lot of the mental health issues that we face simply exist because we are people of color, and the trauma and the marginalization and the rejection that we have endured. So that's the first one. And it has other things in there. It has YouTube channels you can follow. It has affirmations you can say. It has a lot of stuff. And so then the other one is suicide prevention for preachers. This one deals with preachers being able to keep their faith community safe. So I walk you through what you need to put on your website. Because if you are a church and people are coming to your website to watch the word and to do all these things, you need to have something up there for people who may be experiencing suicidal ideation, for people who may be depressed. You need to have the phone number up there. You need to have verbiage up there about how to deal with that. Because if your campus isn't open, they can't just show up and, want to talk to you. If you're not in your office and they call, they're not going to get you, and you don't want to leave them hanging. So I have things like that. I have graphics you can post on social media. I have things that, resources that you can order from the government and things like that. And the goal for that is just to kind of break the stigma in the church and make it so that you make the information available without the person who needs the information feeling singled out for wanting to have it.
And so valuable. And I know that in the past, I've had different mental health organizations on that talk about that within the church. And I think that people don't realize, especially, maybe if they aren't someone who attends church or is in that setting, to realize that there's so much stigma around that, faith and mental health, you're supposed to just faith.
Right.
That doesn't mean that you're, not having any mental health, issues.
Right.
And what a great place to get congregations of any kind involved to spread the word, because people are going there for that reassurance already, and to communicate if they can just feel that they're accepted, by that. Now, for organizations, what about when we're talking about our youth, and especially when we're talking about children of color? I know I've had on my show before different organizations that just do different services in the autistic community and whatnot for those of color. Just because obviously the specific wording, the way that they're going to go about things is going to be very different. On your site, do you have anything that speaks to more of the youth or the teen age group? Because I know that that has been something pretty traumatic lately, that I've seen a lot through this pandemic.
Mhm. Mhm.
Teenagers,
Yes.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that's statistic or not, but I know that I feel like it's so much more either visible to us, maybe it
Mhm.
was happening before, but that teenagers are dying by suicide.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting about that is that when I was doing my suicide prevention guide, one thing I saw was that the youngest suicide ever reported by the CDC or to the CDC was that of a 5-year old. And it's like, how you're 5, like. But what people don't understand is that there are websites that tell you how to kill yourself. There are challenges that people do. It's just the whole world. And so if your child is out there, dealing with this and they don't have anywhere to process it, they're going to go online and they may find the right thing, they may not, you know. And so I list apps that I think are good for children to follow, to download, apps that kind of, help them to process through, when they're not okay, when they're feeling, down or whatever. Then, of course, there's the Trevor hotline for LGBTQ youth because LGBTQ youth are more likely to die by suicide than, heterosexual youth or whatever. So, they have like a whole thing that they do. They have a chat, they have like all of that stuff. And so there are lots of resources available for kids. But I think suicide among kids is something that everybody is still trying to process through because so much of it is intertwined with bullying. So, and there's even a term for that, bully side, where you die by suicide because of bullying. And so I think right now, a lot of people are really focused on making that correlation so that they can, kind of intervene before it gets to that point. Because a lot of times, that's really all that drives suicide in young people being bullied, being neglected, a breakup, and not having the emotional wherewithal to be able to process through that, causes you to feel like your life is over and you don't have anything else to live for. And when we as adults aren't pouring into our kids and keeping a check on them and asking the questions, they slip through the cracks and then we end up with tragedies because nobody saw it coming. But if you're proactive and you talk to your child and you create a plan for your child when they don't feel safe, your child stands a better chance of withstanding the things that they go through.
And and possibly from your research, you may have found schools, organizations, and states that do this better. But I know there was talk for a while of really incorporating mental health into our curriculums in our schools. And now at the
Mhm.
beginning, I don't know, half of the world, half of America is going to go to school and half of it's going to be at home. And then the
Mhm.
parents dealing with their own mental health and the kids. Are there any states that are doing that well with really incorporating into their educational system the anti-bullying slash mental health for kids, like any good models for other states to model after, to have programming come in for that?
I don't know like particular states, but what I do know is my state, good old North Carolina, we are in the process of training all of our teachers in suicide prevention. So the law was just passed like a couple of weeks ago. So they're going to be doing that. And one of our cities, Charlotte, North Carolina, they're in Mecklenburg County. They have a really good, like, all inclusive thing. And I don't know if you know, but Lady Gaga is really pushing having youth mental health first aid in schools. I took youth mental health first aid, and it's basically the baseline what you need to know about young people, depression, suicide, abuse, alcoholism, all that kind of stuff. And it's really amazing. And so what I think is that nationally, especially as we continue to go through the pandemic, there's going to be more of a push to get everybody equipped because we're going through something that we've never been through before. And because of the way our children are, they're so fragile because we work so hard to give our kids what we never had. And so a lot of things that we had to work for, our kids don't have to work for, you know what I mean? And so they are in a much different place than we were in. And sometimes because they're in that place, it causes us to kind of overcompensate and then protecting them from everything they don't get to develop that muscle strength, to get through things. And so I think that as this pandemic is going on, there's going to be more of a push to, take care of the mental health of kids.
Yes, I think that's so important. I had seen an article, and this was before the pandemic, something that in New York, they were trying something like a pilot program or something within their school.
Hmm.
But if you hear anything about any of that, I would love for you to send me those resources to be able to post and share if you
Definitely.
right? Because I think that it starts from the beginning, right? I mean, if we're really helping our kids from a young age on learn how, like you said, to deal with different things and have the tools and strategies they need to move forward when they
Hmm.
have issues, it's just going to help them be stronger adults, you know.
Definitely.
And if it's not such stigmatized that we can't talk about it.
Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. So, NaKole, you are absolutely amazing.
Thank
All
you.
all that you have done and all that you are doing um, for your own community and for those around the world. I would love if after we get off the show, can you, under this live, there are a few questions, so if you can go in and answer those from the people who post those afterwards.
Okay.
We'll be live just on the Facebook page. You can go in and do that. And then can you drop below where they can download those resource guides that you put together for this month?
I can.
Awesome. That'll be awesome. And also your book, if you can drop that link below as well, when we're done, that would be great. So
Okay.
as we are wrapping up, NaKole, is there any final thoughts that you'd like to leave the audience with if they're tuning in, jumping in to watch this as we chat about suicide prevention and Minority Mental Health Awareness Month?
So, if I could leave anything, what it would be is that you can't rely on what you've always known because we don't live in that world anymore. It used to be a time where if your family member, friend, whoever was suicidal, you could tell because they didn't care about their hygiene, they didn't care about their appearance, they wouldn't go places that they normally would go. Well, you can't go anywhere. We don't have anywhere to go, so what are we wearing clothes and putting on makeup for? You know what I mean? Like the time is different. And so the things that we would be able to see before, they don't matter now because people wear pajamas every day because where are we going? Nowhere. And so we have to dig deeper and we have to start having these conversations. And because there is no blanket sign, because everybody is being collectively traumatized. We are in a very traumatic situation right now with the pandemic, with the violence, with the racial injustice, with the voting, and it's
Yeah.
just a lot. And so we don't know how this is going to affect us. It takes a while for trauma to even register in your system. Some people are still in shock. Some people are still in anger, and so we have to do a good job as family members and friends of just making sure that we're asking the questions and keeping up with our people the best we can.
Yes, most definitely.
Oh, and if you need help, you need to get help. And don't be scared and don't worry about what anybody's going to say because it doesn't matter. If you need help and if you feel like you're not going to make it, you need to make the phone call. You need to do what you need. There are people offering free therapy because of COVID-19. You need to do what you need to do and do not worry about what anybody has to say about it because at the end of the day, you deserve to be whole and you deserve to be well.
Yes, and during this Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, all of the leaders of their different communities that we have had on, they have websites, they have Facebook pages, they have resources, not only there, but for you to reach out to them. And I'm certain that if any one of them that has been on, you need somebody to reach out to, you can reach out to them and either they can help you personally or they can direct you to the right people, to do so for you. So yes, knowing that you are not alone and that we need to keep having the real convos, we need to keep having conversation. NaKole, one last ask, after we get off, can you drop that phone number that all of us should have programmed in our phone
Definitely.
with us all the time for if anybody needs our helpline? So drop that below when we're done. But I thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon to be here with us today at the Honor.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you being a part of this series. If anybody wants to know more information about NaKole, she'll be dropping all of her information below. If you guys would like more information about the resources from the On-Air Advocate, you can head on over to onairadvocate.com. And if you'd like to become part of our private community, you can head right up to the top of this Facebook page, hit the blue button, and that will let you into our private group. So with that, thank you again so much, NaKole.
Thank you.
All a very blessed Wednesday. Thanks again, everybody. Bye-bye.